valued after 10 years at $70 million. And the first 6, I didn't know what the I was doing. Making a whole lot of money just introduces you to the next echelon and makes you feel smaller.
You're the king of this pond, now you're a small fish in the next pond.
He is a sought-out thought leader and a veteran, the founder of Medicare Con.
Justin Brock!
And you and your wife were high school sweethearts. And then you go into the military service.
I turned 19 in boot camp.
What were some of the craziest experiences?
The drill instructor grabs his wrist and starts licking the open wound. If you're worried about like the wild stuff they do to you in there, like what you think might happen to you in Iraq or Afghanistan. I decided to get out when I would go on these 2-month detachments, come back, and my 10-month-old son had forgotten in 2 months who I was. That's why I wrote this book, Purpose After Service. Everybody coming out of the Marine Corps, it's like trying to replicate their specialty. So they typically become cops or security. I wanted to do something big in sales. The only thing that was holding me back was how many people could I get in front of and get to buy something from me.
What was it like the day you get that $70 million wire transfer? What did that feel like for you?
Before we get into this epic interview, I have one quick ask. Well, we've had the privilege of reaching millions of people on the show. The data shows that almost 80% of you guys who watch the show aren't yet subscribed. So if you could do me one quick favor and click that subscribe button right now, it would mean the absolute world to us. Because when you hit subscribe, not only are you allowing us to grow the show, get bigger guests, ask better questions, but you're allowing us to honor our commitment to do everything in our power to help you take your life, your business, your health, your relationships to that next level. And with no further ado, enjoy the show.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Passionate Few podcast. It's your host, Omar, and today we have an incredible interview with none other than the CEO of BBI, Justin Brock. In this interview, we're going to talk about his incredible story and what he's talking to people around the world about to find purpose after service. So with no further ado, thanks so much for being on the show today, Justin.
Thank you for having me, Omar.
Absolutely, man. So for a lot of people who may have not heard your incredible story and all the things you're doing now, you're still very young. Can you give the audience a little bit of context as your current business acumen as of today? You had a recent big success, and we'll get into your story. But first off, I just want to start, just so the audience has a little bit of context on the awesome business you just built and partially exited.
Yeah, so March 27th of this year, we exited 51% controlling interest of a couple of companies that kind of run congruently in the Medicare health insurance distribution space. We were at a high multiple of 11x on an EBITDA at $6.3 million. So that's what kind of gets that punchline value of the $70 million exit valuation.
Mm-hmm. And when you first got into business, like a lot of people, you didn't know what you were doing entirely, right? Take me back to before you got into business, your childhood, where you grew up, and how little by little military service kind of came into your life.
Absolutely. I grew up in a town called Marietta, Mississippi. I normally say Marietta, people say Marietta, Georgia. That's a bigger one. It's still not that big. But where we're from is around 900 people in the small town, big pea farming town. So I grew up with a family that wasn't from there either. They were all transplants in the area, small house, and went to a high school that the graduating class was 39.
Wow.
So really small, didn't have a football team or anything like that. And was dating my now wife at the time and really didn't know what we wanted to do. I wanted to get, wanted to do something big. You wanted to do something big with your life. And at that time, the thinking is just not there. Like the horizon is not very wide. Back then, like a big trip for me would like driving 16 hours to the coast of the Carolinas to go to the Outer Banks. Like that was like the biggest thing we did in life. Mm-hmm. And so the Marine Corps seemed pretty big at the time. And that's what I ended up doing. It also provided us with the ability for my wife and I to get married young and be able to start a life where we had kind of not a lot of money, but at least a continuous check.
And you and your wife were high school sweethearts. How old were you when you guys actually met and then got married?
I was 19 and 17, or she was 17 when we got married. I was 17, she was 15 when we met. And so, yeah, it not something we want our kids to do, not something we necessarily encourage, but it worked out for us. It was cool. We got to grow up together. We got to, learn from our mistakes together. And in some ways, like I kind of worry about people that don't get to do that. Like sometimes if you wait too long, you don't get to really grow together at all, and we did. Of course, we were a little early, so we had to grow through a lot of maturing right out of the gate.
And then you go into the military service. At this time, you had no idea what you kind of wanted to do in business, and it seemed like kind of a train track for discipline. Were you naturally disciplined? Were you like, did you have any kind of, like, were you a bad kid, or did you kind of run into like troubles early on, or was it something that you did because you wanted to like just better yourself mentally?
You know, it's funny you read. So we'll start by saying a lot of people, I have a couple of friends like this, where we have this joke where, you know, to get attention online, a lot of times you have to have this, like, I was a heroin addict who went to prison for 7 years and beat by wire and then lived in my car. I didn't, you know, I was a good kid. Like, I wasn't, you know, didn't grow up rich, didn't have like everything handed, but I was a good kid. I wasn't, you know, out doing anything bad. My wife and I, you know, early on were good. You know, I was hanging out with my little brother all the time. He was 6 years younger than me, so he was so young he couldn't do much. My wife came along and she became my best friend. And then we went straight into the Marine Corps, and we were pretty vanilla, you know, nothing super exciting. I wouldn't say that I was extremely disciplined, maybe more than the average, you know, teenager at the time, because I did have a pretty domineering dad that was like real heavy on like doing yard work all the time and getting a job. So as soon as I could work, I had jobs. I was always working.
What were your first jobs?
First official jobs were so I did landscaping kind of off the record, but first, like, you know, if you looked it up on Social Security, I see a lot of people pulling SSA records right now because they're trying to prove that Kamala didn't work at McDonald's, and so these SSA transcripts, you saw that mine would be Applebee's. I mean, I was a bus boy at Applebee's, went to Red Lobster, bus boy, worked in the paint department at Lowe's. So I did all those kind of, you know, American corporate style jobs from the restaurant industry to construction, retail, but also mowed yards and those types of things. So before I went in the Marine Corps, I wasn't, you know, the most disciplined, but who is at 16 and 17? But I wasn't bad. I wasn't out slipping really, wasn't drinking, wasn't doing any of that. I knew that I didn't want to do that. But I'm constantly finding these kids now in the insurance industry that their horizon is bigger even at that age. And I'm always trying to identify, how do you find the 18-year-old that's going to be, you know, this you know, crazy success story? Because sometimes their anatomy or the things they're exposed to are crazy. So like, I wonder sometimes if I would have been in a same kid, same upbringing in a different city with more exposure, how much quicker could I have accomplished things? And I don't know the answer. And of course, a bigger city could have spoiled me and made me terrible. So
Right, yeah.
but definitely
Where you met your wife and then we're going a different direction, or a million kind of,
I never like try to go back and, you know, try to re-engineer it, but just wondering when I'm looking for those other people, because I love hiring young guys, young people in general, if you can find the right person, you know, and
the diamond in the rough.
the diamond in the rough. You know, when they're really young, you can get them and like train them from the get-go, right? They can be really awesome people.
And we'll talk about the scope of your business, because I know you guys work with, I believe, 50,000 different medical organizations. I know you guys have agents that help people all over the country. And we'll touch base on that. But I want to switch gears a little bit to when you talked about going into the service. What was boot camp like, your first 30 days?
Oh, man.
90 days, I believe.
So it's a 13-week boot camp, Parris Island, and
I've heard horror stories.
Yeah, so when I went in, basically the first 3 days they call forming days, and they bring in the drill instructors. It's funny, is if you first get there, you get a drill instructor that you think is your drill instructor, and he's an asshole. But he's really just trying to get you through all the medical screenings and the initial strength tests, and then you get your real, like what we call the kill hat, the drill hat, and the senior. And the first day that they came in, and you know, one of them took a polyurethane canteen and slammed it into the ground, and it shattered, which is kind of hard thing to shatter. It's like this really thick thing. And this guy's name was Brock Goss. His name was Staff Sergeant Goss. He's actually a friend of mine now. I'm friends with him, but like at the time, he was the scariest guy in the world. He's profusely sweating, beet red, you know, just looked like he just did, you know, 7 lines of cocaine before the first time I met him. And it's a very mental game, because you're a kid. You know, I turned 19 in boot camp, and while I was there, you know, there were some guys that were like 26, 27 years old, and some of those guys got kicked out because they couldn't adapt. It really needs to be that young guy that goes to a Marine Corps boot camp, because you have to be able to, they can't have enough exposure to the world to be like now it would never work. You're too grown to go through it. Like you need to be in that state of mind where they can really kind of break you down and then build you back up with a new level of confidence. So I think it's a really beautiful thing that they've created, because the process, while you're in it, you're thinking, why in the hell did I do this for a little while? But by the time it's over, you really have this dignity that they create within you by breaking you down and then forcing you to build yourself back up. So I'm a big believer in the parasilent process.
What were some of the craziest, like 1 to 2 experiences or exercise? I've heard one with my cousin was in it, and he said there was one where they had to wear like a gas mask and it had like small shards of glass or something.
Yeah.
Like cuts, and there's just
Okay, yeah.
crazy stories like
I'll give you some of those, yeah. So, I mean, the drill instructors, they have to mess with a lot of downtime, because there's things they have to do. You have a schedule, but there's a lot of hurry up and wait. That's kind of a common thing that we talk about in the Marine Corps. And so when they're messing with that downtime, you got to think about, these guys aren't that old. They're typically guys that join when they're 18. Now they're 25, 26, some of them roided out looking scary guys, but they're not very old, and they're in charge of all these kids, young men. And when the downtime happens is when the crazy stuff would happen. So there's like one time where we had this guy, Sergeant Arnold. He was one of the younger kill hats, black guy, very dark black guy. Like sometimes you'd be like trying to hide and stay under the radar, and you just see his white eyes, and then when you realize it was him, you were just scared. He was a scary guy. Yeah. But he got us all to pick up our foot lockers one time and go into the shower. So all the showers are open bay. It's like a square room. That's where you all showered. We go in there holding these foot lockers, which are like this big, kind of, big, not super heavy, but heavy to walk around carrying, full of stuff. We all go in there. There's 72 of us. We're squeezing there, and it's like almost impossible to squeeze 72 guys holding their foot locker in there. And as we're going in there, this one guy, I think it was recruit Lavoy, cuts his hand open on the foot locker. We're going through that shower door. It like gets sandwiched up, and it slices his hand open pretty good, where it's bleeding pretty good. And he puts his foot locker down and stands up and says, "Sir, this recruit cut his hand." So that's how we had to refer to ourselves. And he comes over and he grabs his wrist and starts licking the open wound, the drill instructor does, to this recruit.
in front of you guys.
In front of us, and then basically is telling like he doesn't give a shit about that. And then so then the recruit picks his foot locker back up, and we're standing there, and it's just kind of games like that all the time. Yeah. There was one time where
so it just builds like a relentless mindset, bulletproof mindset.
Yeah, it was really. I mean, like when you're in it, you're like, "What? This is crazy." And if you think of your kid going through it, you're like, "Wow, I can't believe somebody would do that." But at the process too, when they're taught this stupid stuff that they're doing too, you're training a kid to go to combat. And at the time that I was in, we were in both Iraq and Afghanistan. And so if you're worried about like the wild stuff they do to you in there, like what do you think might happen to you in Iraq or Afghanistan? Exactly. So like they should prepare you for some crazy stuff, and they should widen the horizon of what you can expect, because as you travel around the world and as you talk to a lot of people, as you know at this point, like the world can be crazy, right? And so they're taking a lot of kids that from Iowa and Texas and California and New York and Mississippi, and a lot of them, some of them have more exposure to the craziness in the world than others. But for the most part, collectively, they don't have that much exposure. They probably think they have more than they do. So I think it's cool to see that. I mean, I know that sounds like, what a crazy guy. First of all, I wouldn't want to lick someone's blood. I don't know what he's got. But these guys are nuts, man. Some of them are nuts, and we need them.
Wow. So then you get out of that, and then what happens when you get out of the Marines? You start thinking about business, or start thinking about next moves in life. How do you grow as a person? What's next for you?
So yeah, I re-enlisted after the first 4 years. My son Jackson was born, and I didn't know how I was going to take care of a family. That's a really new concept. Now there's a child we have to deal with. Before that, it's me and my wife, and we're kind of like best friends. So like we could have survived under anything.
What motivated you to get married that young? Was it more common in Mississippi?
I don't think it was that common that young. It was, we got to a point where it was, we're either gonna not be together or we're gonna have to get married, because of the way our life was, maturing, and I was going to the Marine Corps. So we decided we didn't want to not be together, so we're gonna get married. And because, like I was saying, we weren't out partying and stuff, we just felt like there were people older than us that were less mature than us that
True.
didn't work out. And in our lives, we'd seen people get married at 30, 40, 50 that were getting divorced. We'd seen them get married at 25, get divorced. So like, we didn't really, in our minds at the time, think that much that age had to do with it. You know, as a parent now, yeah, I don't want my kid to get married at 19 or 17. I want him to experience a little bit. But at the same time, is it the worst decision ever? I think it's to each person to make, and I think society shouldn't really have too much of an impact on whether that's the best decision, because it all depends on the person.
And context at that time and season of life, environment, all that.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Sorry to cut you off. I know I did rest from the thing. I just had to ask because I think it's really interesting and so few people talk about it. So
Yeah. And it worked for us. I mean, who knows where I'd be if I didn't have my wife with me the whole time to help, you know, kind of keep me. I might would have done really stupid stuff. She might would have done really stupid stuff. You know, we did a little bit of partying and stuff too.
a little bit of stupid stuff together.
Yeah, but it was like, you know, it was never so far off the path that we had some just wild story.
So it helped kind of keep you guys anchored a little bit.
I feel like it did, yeah.
That's awesome. So then you were saying you get out of the service and then you're thinking about what to do next after you reenlist?
Yeah, so after I reenlisted, we moved to Japan. We lived in Japan for a few years. My daughter was born. I decided to get out when I would go on these 2-month detachments and over there it was training detachments. So we would go into like South Korea and Thailand, and I leave and I come back and my 10-month-old son had forgotten in 2 months who I was. So it was like, you come back and it's like this period of like, okay, this was okay when it was my wife because she didn't forget me, you know. We were communicating, but it's not a place where you're gonna raise kids. And we knew we were gonna have at least one more kid. So it just didn't make any sense anymore. And so at that point I started thinking about what I wanted to do. And I wouldn't say I had like a great plan. It's just, you know, we knew people that had done well in the insurance space, in the health insurance space, not, you know, what we have done, but we saw them replace an income in it, you know. And so I decided that when I got out, I would just try to do that. But the initial goal, man, was replace 60,000 in income. I still didn't have this horizon because the Marine Corps is not a place that prepares you for, you know, the idea of wealth,
business,
you know,
you
know. So, but it does create discipline, like you said, and you can get on, like, you create a process, and then every day you put one foot in front of the other in the right direction. And part of, as you know, part of wealth creation is sticking to the course, stay in the course for a long period of time. You know, a little bit of it can be a little bit of like ignorance is bliss. Is you don't know how long the path is going to be and how crazy it's going to be.
How many obstacles?
So how many obstacles are going to be? So you just keep trucking it, you know, and the Marine Corps does that for you. So that's why, like, when I wrote this book that we're about to put out, Purpose After Service, it was like, you know, if I could just impart that concept on people of like, you know, go out, choose a career in one of these types of fields, you know, because I talk a lot about sales and marketing and that type of stuff in there. You know, not everybody coming out of the Marine Corps, it's like trying to replicate their modus or their MOS, their specialty from the Marine Corps or in the Army, any service. I believe they're trying to come out and replicate what they've done. So if it's air traffic control, go into AT, trying to get a job in ATC. If it's aircraft maintenance, you're trying to become an aircraft mechanic. If it's infantry, it does not very directly relatable to other things. So they typically become cops or security or something like that, or a contractor that goes overseas for different things. And but if they looked at this other, you know, concept, I think that they would find a lot of purpose in it, you know.
Hey guys, we'll get right back to this video in a sec, but first I have a quick question for you. Given that the e-commerce industry is growing by the trillions year over year, have you ever dreamed of owning your own e-commerce business like many of the guests we've had on the show, but maybe you feel stuck on how to start? Well, if so, you're not alone. The truth is, starting and setting up your own online store can be incredibly time-consuming, complicated, and get expensive. Not to mention the hassle of researching top products and staying on top of market trends that make you money. Lucky for you, that's where today's sponsor, StoreBuild.ai, comes in. With StoreBuild.ai, you instantly get a free custom-built, AI-driven store loaded with 20 winning products and a custom theme that can help you generate sales. All you need to do is head to StoreBuild.ai, enter your info, then simply sign up to Shopify for free, choose your store's look and feel, and voila! They'll send you your custom-built store ready to generate sales. The whole process is lightning fast. Whether you're just starting out or want to grow, storebuild.ai makes launching an online store easier than ever. So why wait? Visit storebuild.ai and in less than 5 minutes, you could have the e-commerce business you've always dreamed of. Thanks to StoreBuild.ai for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back to the show.
Did you get out of it with like a lot more ambition? Because I know before you started going into it, you had the kind of bigger dreams than your environment in Mississippi. Did you come out of it with like a fire in your belly? Obviously, you had kids at that point, and so your family's starting to grow. So was it like a combustion of fire that was like driving you to do more and more, and you were just waiting for a vehicle? Or like, I guess what was going through your mind at the time? Because a lot of people are in that same situation, but don't end up on, a better side of the fence, so to speak. So I'm just curious, what was going on in your mind at that time, and then how did that lead to
Survival and frugality. I was trying. We had about $26,000 saved up from 8 years in the Marine Corps, which is not a lot of money saved up, but it was something.
Right.
I had to make that last until I could figure out how to replace my income. So everything was survival oriented. The fire came from sales, going out and at the time, I was buying direct mail leads from a company that would basically, just establish some level of intent and an excuse to knock on somebody's door. And I was knocking straight on the door, just walk up, didn't call, didn't appointment set, didn't do any of that. I would walk straight up to the door, dressed up as nice as I could in my J.C. Penney's, half off rack, outfit.
Yeah.
And I would try to get in the house and talk to them and find out what they had and see if I could beat it. So a lot of it is price beating. In
So you started knocking doors?
Yeah.
So when was the day? How did you hear about the opportunity? What made you think about sales as an income vehicle?
Yeah.
Like, take me back to that before you started getting into the door.
So I knew somebody else that was selling Medicare, selling Medicare supplements. There's products. What happens is people retire, you go on Medicare, and they have an insurance product that supplements Medicare so that they have little to no out of pocket. Because Medicare alone for elderly people doesn't pay all their healthcare expenses, pays about 80%. So this product would come in and pay the 20%.
Okay.
So my whole process was find people that had one of these products, but they were paying too much for it, and then replace it with a cheaper one. That was all I was thinking about at the time. And the goal was make $50,000, make $60,000 a year. But the fire in the belly concept, I believe, happened when I was out on the road. This is rural Mississippi, so we're doing long drives, and I started listening. I was like, I'm not going to listen to music the whole time, so I started listening to podcasts. And at the time, I would find I started listening to productivity podcasts. I started listening to like old school stuff like Zig Ziglar, Highway, University on Wheels stuff. I had a fully unloaded Toyota Corolla I was driving around in, and
I had a 2013 Toyota Corolla that I used to knock doors in too.
Yeah.
So I could relate to that.
Yeah. So when I started doing that, man, listening to these people, and I'd find some people in the financial services arena, not directly what we were doing, but similar, talking about marketing a lot. Then I got turned on to podcasts like The Art of Paid Traffic. Then I found Russell Brunson, and I got into that online marketing world. But it was the drive of like getting someone that said yes to what you were doing. Like you'd get in the house. First, getting in the house was almost gratifying. But then you get in the house and you'd actually feel like, holy crap, I can help this person. And then they would like trust you and agree. And it's not like what we were selling was a good product. But the fact that you were able to convince them to trust you, it felt like a superpower. And then you started realizing when you get paid from it that like my only limitation in this mode of life, up until that point had been regular jobs, the Marine Corps. There's limitations, there's ceilings. Like you're always chasing promotion, right? And that's like corporatism or bureaucracy is holding you back. In sales, the only thing that was holding me back was how many people could I get in front of and get to buy something from me. And then I started learning marketing and realizing how marketing could shorten the sales cycle. And I mean, that was the big bang. The big original bang was just falling in love with sales and then using online marketing, Facebook marketing to shorten my sales cycle.
Were you a natural at it in the beginning in sales?
Do
you remember your first day on the doors?
I think I was. Like I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. I know there's guys out there that are dynamic salespeople.
Sure.
I think I was very relatable. I knew how to get people to trust me by being just down to earth, being an easy to get along with person. And the product that I was selling is in the healthcare, It was with elderly people. I was young. I thought being young was going to hurt me. I think it helped me. So I was 26 at the time. So being 26, had a clean shaven face. I'd show up, with looking like I got out of Sunday school, and and I think these people would let me in more often than not because I looked trustworthy. I was putting on being that persona. And I was trustworthy. Like I wasn't not, and that's the thing about sales. It gets a bad rap because there are some people that utilize sales to manipulate people into things that they shouldn't do. But we weren't. We were going out and finding people that needed help. Now there was times where, this person, I might only save $5 a month, but I would still try to persuade them by saying, hey, and you get me,
Yeah.
But the process was just there. And then I realized with marketing too, if you're at the right kind of marketing, you can get in front of more and more people that actually need your help. And Facebook, this is 2014. Facebook ads in 2014 were the GOAT. They're still good. But back then, nobody was doing it. Nobody was doing it like for the market that we were in. They weren't doing it in a lot of markets.
So it's easy to bring in leads.
It's such underpriced attention. Now, I didn't know that. So what happened was I started advertising on Facebook, and people would just pick up the phone. I was spending $25 a day and getting just inbound calls to people like, hey, can you help me with insurance? Hey, can you? And so I was spending $25 a day, and I was doing everything I could. And that became where I started realizing eventually that the breaking point was I can only write so many people. I have to have a team. I have to build a team and a system and a process. Which started turning you on to different people. That's where you started following the Grant Cardones that were out there in the world, and all these guys. There weren't a lot. Now there are. Now you see like the Alex Hormozis and the Brandon Dawson and those guys that are talking more system operational process. But I started looking for that. Who could help me? And I started going to insurance conferences, meeting people that were further along, like learning everything I could from them to develop processes. And then, eventually I was able to get where I'm not selling anything. And it's just like I'm better served amplifying marketing, training agents, and building the system and process that puts them in the right seat.
Yeah.
Which kind of sped up things there, but when you can sell, I wish people realize, whether you're a veteran or not, anybody, sales is not hey, be in sales forever. And to some degree you're selling always, but being in direct to consumer or even B2B sales as the salesperson forever is not what I would say is the goal. It's learn to sell, then learn to market to shorten the sales cycle or the prospecting cycle. So I can sit in front of as many prospects as possible that are ready to buy now. Then it's learn to operate and to build yourself out of that so you can train the salespeople and then bridge the marketing gap for them and create a better process than you walked into. Because when I walked into a process, it was it's hard, it's difficult. If you're door knocking, it's not the best way. It's a drag. You're driving around, you're in the heat, you're basically cold knocking with a very mild lead or a level of intent.
Yeah.
But, so I wanted to create a process that the people that I'd bring in were not having to do it the same way. So we started creating a revenue model around that where we could afford, with a different commission structure, to create a process where these people could walk in and all they had to worry about was selling. You don't have to worry about the other stuff.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, I know when we spoke before, you were saying that traditionally most people, when they get into the business, they started as agents, commission-based agents. And so you came up with a model that was kind of like a hybrid model. It's kind of pretty unique. I think more and more people are starting to do it, but can you explain to people kind of your guys' model, and then we'll talk about sort of the other business verticals you've also gotten into. But yeah, would love to hear high level kind of how you guys structure your business a little bit different than most.
Hey guys, quick question. Have you been enjoying this video, but you're thinking to yourself, man, I love this content, but I want to learn how to grow my brand or my business? Well, if your answer is yes, you're not alone. In fact, millions of entrepreneurs deal with this exact same issue. And it's something that I've learned the answer to from interviewing 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs around the world. And this philosophy that solves all that is a concept called who, not how. Now, the who, not how philosophy states that anytime you're stuck on the hows to get to the next level in your life, your brand, or your business, that there's always a who to help you get there. And it's for this exact reason that I'm super excited to announce that I've officially launched our brand new Passionate Few community to help you do exactly that. And yes, it's 100% free. Join me and the thousands of other entrepreneurs that can help you make your life, your business, and your dreams a reality. With no further ado, let's get back to the video.
Yeah, kind of the cash cow model that we now, so we have this other model we'll probably talk about in a minute, that where we help people build as independent agents into agency owners. But in the process, we're helping them build the model that I built first, which is, we just call it the W-2 model. So instead of going out and creating 1099 only sales reps, we hire and recruit and train people that aren't looking to be insurance agents into a job. So it's just like, we're not going out and saying, who wants to work from home, who wants to do this? Because that's one method of like recruiting and finding potential agents. We're going out and find people that were in retail, that were basketball coaches, that were all these things, and say, hey, I see you're making that much money, probably working like a dog, it's inconsistent. You know, would you like to make that much, maybe a little bit more in a setting where you're happier? Mm-hmm. So we created the brick and mortar W-2 call center kind of option where people would come in. It's a great cultural thing. If you ask any of our employees, like, it's the coolest place to work, especially in where we're at. There's probably more of these types of places in bigger cities or opportunities where people enjoy where they're working, like actually where we're filming's kind of like our office. But they're coming in, the lead quality is high, they're talking to people overwhelmingly that actually want to talk to them about what we're talking about, and they're helping them save money, they're helping them unlock benefits, they're educating them on the benefits they have. And there's a rewarding process there. And we never recruit them on making a lot of money, but we know that they're going to make more money than we told them because we undersell it. So the concept for us is like, recruit somebody that's used to making 38, 40, 45,000 a year and make them make 65, 70, 75 in the first year. And then eventually, 150, 200,000 is probably the earning potential in that W-2 model. Now, as an independent agent, on the other side, when we recruit someone in the independent model, well, the sky's the limit there, but you're having to create the marketing process. You're having to hire and retain agents like we're talking about. You're having to do all these things. And so then when we created that W-2 model and has 50 employees in there, what we started doing was saying, well, now we'll recruit you into our ecosystem and train you from the ground up how to create that for yourself. Now, it's not easy, just like nothing. None of this stuff is easy. All these people that come on, like, you should invest in real estate, you should sell solar, you should do all these things. Like, it's all freaking hard, Mm-hmm. But the benefit of what we do, and this is what people have to understand, is there's not a lot of people out there talking about Medicare and health insurance. But you sell a policy, the right policy, you keep a customer happy, it's level residual income for the life of the customer. Mm-hmm. So you can literally enroll them, and this year you get paid, and the next year you get paid, and the next year you get paid. And then even if they never called you back, if they kept that policy, you just get paid forever and ever and ever. So it's not like get rich quick. It's kind of a get rich slow deal.
Yeah.
But you have to place the right product because you want them to keep it. Or you have to say, hey, even if you need to change this product, we want to build rapport, so you call our office back and let us shop it for you again.
And so essentially you guys are partnering with other insurance products, so to speak. I mean, high level understanding just for the average audience member. You're partnering with other agencies and insurance products, offering them to consumers, but instead of having sales reps you pay commissions for, you can kind of, in lieu of some of the tasks that those reps would do for commissions, you guys take some of that work off their plate, get a little more meat on the bone for the business, and also create an environment that's not like the traditional sales, where they're just trying to like say whatever, sell whatever, maximize their commissions. And you're basically trying to do the opposite of what most people in the industry are doing, which is promising 6 figures the first year.
It's a churn and burn recruiting model. So a lot of insurances is, hey, you can make 250, you can make 300,000, you can make, and we have that model. I'm not saying like if someone was watching and wanted to replicate our success, we have the model that brings them in. It's not the same as the person we hire to sell. It's going from 45,000 to 70 to 100 to 120 to 150. It's a different model. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of all or nothing. You're having to put a lot more in. But we also want those people to aim towards creating the model that we've created, where you're creating that process. And if they'll work to replicate it, and let's be real, like it's definitely valuable. When we valued after 10 years at $70 million, and the first 6, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So like it's definitely a valuable model, and we want to help people replicate that. It's also better for the market that we're in, because we're building true all in sales reps versus a bunch of, bloodthirsty door knockers, which, I'm not saying like I did the right thing in the house. We've all been people do, but when you're out in the sun and you're like trying to get in the house, somebody gets you in the house, it's really difficult. You want to get that sale, right? We're creating a process where these agents, they're not in that type of dire strait, which means your product placement is better, the compliance of it's better. It's because this is a compliance-driven market. You're marketing insurance products. There's no inventory. The inventory is limitless because insurance is protection of risk of healthcare costs. That's what we're insuring against. But the products are all by like Aetna, Mutual of Omaha, Humana, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's what we're marketing. But we're really marketing us as an expert. And it does not cost the consumer anything to use our agency or our agents or you as an independent agent any more than it would if you just called straight to the insurance company. In fact, the insurance companies typically don't like that. They just send you back down to an agency or agents or brokers because they like that one arm's distance from direct customer until it is an actual customer of the company.
Makes sense. And for you, when you were growing the business, you mentioned that you didn't know anything in terms of how you were building it. You were learning on the fly. How important do you think that is to growing a business for people watching this or maybe hearing this who go, easy for Justin, he must have figured it out or he must have known what we don't. So what high-level context can you share with the audience about like taking imperfect action in business, how that's just a part of the game?
Yeah. Well, I was watching one of your videos. You had this short where I think Sean Kelly maybe asked you something similar.
Yeah.
And the answer really is nobody really knows what they're doing. They just do it anyway, right? And as you do it, you learn a little bit.
Anyways.
Yes. And that's what separates the people that do big things and don't. I'm confident of that. It's not that they know what they're getting into. It's they know that they're confident that they can figure it out more times than they can. And so, for me, anytime I'd see anybody else doing anything, I didn't have to know much about it other than somebody else has done it. And that could be a small nuances of our business, right? Like this person over here is doing it this way. If they can do it, I can do it. This person's doing later on, there's actually some things I found out they were doing it, but it wasn't profitable. I'm glad I didn't know that at the time because it would have talked me out of doing it. But really, I just wanted to evolve the business and we're still that way. Like even after the sale, I retained 49% equity because we wanted to continue to grow this thing. It had just gotten to a point where we felt, if you go through that, you're going through these emotions of like, I need to take some of the chips off the table at this point. We've taken on so much risk at this time, and this is an amount of money that I never thought we would have. So let's go ahead and make sure we lock that in, and then we can go back and chase the 10X after that.
And for you, what was it like, if you don't mind me asking, what was it like the day you get the wire transfer, the day it clears, and it's like a whole new level of what you've experienced before? What did that feel like for you?
Look, I don't know if this led me into this, but I had watched, I think it was Ryan Pineda interviewed Brandon Dawson. So I'm a big podcast guy, so probably helped lead me here. But, he asked the same thing about one of the first businesses he saw, and I think his wire was bigger than mine. But you don't feel much, it came in phases. It's okay, now what? And then there's this other period where you kind of go through a little bit of a spending spree. You'll spend some money on some stuff, and then you realize that didn't really do much.
At least I tried though.
Yeah, I bought a Lamborghini Huracan because that said I was going to, and I could have bought one before that. Like we were making good money. Yeah. But I've like when I say we've been frugal, like I've always been lived below what the means are. Like, and a lot of times because you don't really know what your means are. I still feel that way. Like I don't really.
Business can out of nowhere. You could have a $500,000 lawsuit. You could have whatever it is. Yeah.
So I'm like always trying to be more prepared because like nothing scarier to me than having egg on my face with my wife and my kids and not being the guy that has done what I've done for them.
Of course.
And so I've always been like trying to reel back to be like, let's just make sure that we can keep this quality of life going. So even after I bought the Lamborghini,
what color?
It was matte black. It was like the PPF matte black. I actually got it touched up and spent like $12,000 on redoing its wrap and its hint and stuff. And then right after that, I had it 5 months and I sold it.
Wow, you sold it.
Yeah.
We got it out of your system.
I went and took the money because I pay cash for it. I took the money back and I put it back into some real estate syndication funds, because that's another thing that happens is once you have liquid money, you're like, okay, this isn't like business is like you keep rolling
You
and
start seeing the
growth.
value different. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so when you have liquid money, you're like, okay, I can put this money here and it's going to turn off
Cash
this
flow.
much.
Yeah.
And the most rewarding things that I've spent money on so far have been like chartering yachts in the Mediterranean and having your family on it and do it. So it's like the experience level.
course.
And then you see, okay, how much money does it take to live the life that I really want to live? And now that's a whole different level that you're not at.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you start to feel like making a whole lot of money just introduces you to the next echelon and makes you feel smaller than you did before.
That you move up to another pond. You're the king of this pond. Now you're a small fish in the next pond. Yeah, yeah.
And I think you accept too that, and I mean,
Forever gain?
Yes, it's a forever gain. It's like the biggest gratification other than the yacht with your family. That is fun, you know. But the biggest gratification is the process. It's the wins, you know.
Yeah.
You can never. My wife and I were talking about it earlier. It's why, you know, it's why we were just at BMLP with Brandon Dawson, and it's why Brandon sells a business for $151 million and then partners with Grant, you know, later on to create a whole nother, you know, business, because he's probably addicted to the high of the win and seeing other people win because of your wins. Because you leave this trail of success. In politics, they don't talk about that. It's the evil rich people.
Yeah.
But I've seen it. There's a trail of people that do better behind the person that's paving the way. I mean, I know it happens. I've seen it with us at a small level. And, you know, then I get around these other people and I see this massive trail of wins that without them would probably not be anywhere near to the magnitude that they have been for these people.
Yeah, well said. And then that translates your success from that into some of the other verticals. I know you guys have, I believe, Medicare Con. Is that what it's called? And you guys have some other programs you guys have. Can you share a little bit more about some of the other verticals you guys have and products you guys offer?
Yes. So we definitely, you know, as we began to have success, we started documenting a lot of this online. Gary Vaynerchuk would say, you know, just put it out, just put the content out there and start documenting it. So I started doing that. And then Russell Brunson, I read Expert Secrets way back when. And so eventually, you know, we were part of that early crowd of like online educational content, but ours was very niche. It was focused on building a Medicare and health insurance agency. A lot of stuff out there is very broad. There's a lot of real estate courses, a lot of those things, and I'm not saying those things are valuable, but sometimes you just need a niche. Like how can I be nothing and then take my sweat equity and turn it into $100K a year?
Mm-hmm.
How can I take that $100K and turn it into a $5 million a year team? How can I keep doubling down and leveling up? And we created a process that within our niche, within our vertical, we can show you how to do that. And so there is, we have an online Facebook group. It's got over 15,000 insurance agents in it. New, experienced, all over the place. It's a great way. It's free. It happened before school. I'd have probably built it on school if Alex had that out by now, or Sam Ovens and those guys. But it's a great group, and in that group, you know, we launched other products and services off of it. So we have a Lightspeed BT system called Go Guru University. We have a high-level product called Go Guru Pro, which is made for helping with the marketing and the processes for building an agency. It's great for insurance agents that are out there already that need help. But then we started having events like Medicare Con, which is our annual kind of mega event. It's 1,500 agents. Next year in April, it'll be in Orlando. You can check it out at medicarecon.com. But that event is really for all levels of agents, even brand new, experience, getting together, networking, meeting vendors and software companies that lead companies that cater to our space. And then we just have presentations all day long where we help people like understand the process of getting started and or scaling, growing, marketing better, and staying up to date with the most cutting edge information and building relationships.
I love that.
It's a great event.
And then what about in terms of you guys? I know when you guys built the business, you had mentioned that like you guys, like there's two different verticals you guys have, so to speak, like two different models. I'm curious, what do you think was responsible for getting you to that $70 million valuation, both in terms of a, you know, business structure, like model, but also I've seen a clip where you talk about hiring
you talk about like some of the things or lessons you've learned about when it comes to hiring, whether it be superstar salespeople versus people who are like hungry, humble, and have a good attitude. Like, I guess, what are some of the growth lessons you've learned building a $7 million company?
I think what made us really appetizing, the big thing is the original W-2 model we created the lion's share of the revenue that we are currently benefiting from.
So essentially, you can take what would be the full commission, pay them the salary from it, and then you guys can override that in exchange for the value, making it a lot easier for those reps. That makes sense.
Yeah. So they're getting, in the W-2 model that we created, they're virtually, or essentially, they get a salary plus about 20% of the commission level. We cover licensing, we cover all of the marketing, we cover the phone systems. They're coming into a physical office. Lead gen, everything. We do all the certification tracking, we cover all the software, everything. They have zero expense. We even cover the errors and omissions insurance, which is, to cover any mistakes they make, all that kind of stuff. The other side that made us appetizing to private equity was that we then created that value ladder, the events where we get in front of agents, and the process to teach brokers, which what we call the agents that get the full commission, how to do it. And the vesting in the full commission is that because of the volume of insurance sales we have a brokerage contract that overrides a street level agent. So if anybody came off the street and said, I'm going to call up Humana to sell their products, well, they get a street level commission, which is kind of the street level, more than what we would pay in our W-2 model. It's a big commission. It's very attractive. But then we get an override on top of that. So we have a brokerage model too that we bring people in and we train them how to do it. There's a lot of recruiters in our space, but they'll recruit in and they have no rubric to show them how to succeed. So we did it first and continue to do it so that we can be that trailblazer that says, now here's what we would do if we had to do it all over again, which also means you're not only learning from what we did, but you're learning from what we did that was wrong. Learn from the mistakes.
They're learning in real time. Yeah.
And we continue to try to set that pace and go out and find what's working in the marketplace. We help them market. We help them automate their processes. We help them with scripting, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a great opportunity. It's one that it's crazy because you have solar, you have roofing, you have people talk about real estate investing or real estate brokers. There's car sales. There's all these verticals that are kind of widely known. And then even in the insurance space, it's life insurance. Everybody talks about life insurance, health and Medicare. I'm telling, it's where the life agents come in, and then eventually after they've been in for a while and get burned, they'll come over to health and Medicare. I'm telling people, skip that. Come straight into health and Medicare.
And it's only growing.
It's a growing, the amount of people that are going on Medicare, it will not cap until around 2030. And then at that point, it'll still stay at the highest amount plateaued for it that it's ever been.
How big is the industry as a whole?
So the Medicare side of it as a whole is growing to 70 million people on Medicare. So about right now, 52% of those are what we call Medicare. They're on a Medicare Advantage plan, which is something we sell, and then another 20 to 25% of those are on a Medicare supplement. So there's a lot of people out there.
And we're talking billions in revenue.
Oh yes, yeah, it's huge, and it gets more and more confusing because there are a lot of politics in, of course. So the Democrats will come in and do one thing, and the Republicans come in and do it. Yeah. Regulation, it's funny because there's this quote that somebody in our industry said, every time the government tries to fuck up our business, I make more money.
Yeah.
And it's because it creates confusion. Every time they try to change something, we have to go out and educate people. And so my invitation to agents is, this actually is the best time to get in it because the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed had some huge impacts on our sector it's scaring all the seniors. And when they're scared, they need someone to educate them. It's not necessarily tons to be scared of, but they definitely need someone to help them navigate it. And the older they get, the more often they lose lucidity.
Sure.
And they really need somebody they can trust. And so you need high quality people. So if you're a compassionate person that wants to make a lot of money actually helping people, it's a great space to be in.
Yeah, versus getting reps that are like high commission or predatory against the elder generation. Yeah.
And this is none of these products are super high commission. It's longevity commission. So the first year you go out and you might make 60, 70, 80,000 the next year. But the next year you're getting around that, maybe half that in residual. So like you're in it, if you go hard and fast, you look up 3 years in and you got $200,000, $250,000, $300,000 in residual income chasing. And then the longer you do it, now you're getting referrals, so your marketing costs can go down.
And you could potentially sell your book of business at the end of it too if you grow it.
You could sell your book of business. You could grow it into an operation that works without you and have a business that you sell like I did. You could sell a piece of it. It becomes an extremely valuable asset.
Yeah, with enterprise value, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what about in terms of your products that you're working on now? I know you have the events coming up. I know you have the book coming out. But what are some new things on the horizon, and what's your focus sort of post small chunk exit as you look to the next sort of year to 5-year plan now?
Yeah, I mean, the remaining 49% we have, the way those work is typically on those, there's an earn out provision. There's a put call option, so I can actually increase the EBITDA multiple by growing the company on the remaining value of the company. And if I choose to sell it later on, or if they choose to call portions of that equity, I have large additional exit events. So of course I'm very vested in continuing to grow the business, which actually equals going out and helping other people grow businesses within our ecosystem. So anybody that's looking to get an insurance, we have a great opportunity there, and I'm very vested in it. At the same time, the book that we're putting out, Purpose After Service, we're self-publishing it, but all of the proceeds that come through Amazon and Apple Books and Google Bookstore, we're taking and donating to Tunnels for Towers, which is a charity that helps build homes for veterans that typically disabled veterans or the family members of deceased veterans, that sort of thing. So the goal is to put that out there and get people to buy like tons of these and get them to veterans. Because unfortunately, I'll tell you, I'm a veteran. Veterans oftentimes can get down in the trenches and they're not going out and actually seeking the help. So they're not going out and buying these books.
Is it
They almost have to buy it and get it.
Is it because it's hard to adapt to civilian life after, just with the mental strain of being in it and the juxtaposition being in civilian life, or what do you think causes it? Obviously, it's just your opinion, but
Yeah, my opinion is, from my experience, that you join, like when I joined the Marine Corps, at that point you're joining the Marine Corps. That's supposed to be the coolest thing. That's supposed to be the peak. This is the epitome. I want to do this. It's gonna be the most badass thing. Then I can relax. And in a lot of ways, it's not. I'm not saying it's not completely worthy and people shouldn't do it. Like I don't want to ever come across that way. But in a lot of ways, it's not what you expect. And then after that, you come out of it reeling like, that was the peak, and it still wasn't as fun. And so you definitely develop a lot of great relationships in there. Marines were awesome, developing, relationships with service members, and now coming out, I meet a lot of service members. Even in selling insurance, man, I would go, some of those early door-to-door ones, back then, 10 years ago, you were still running into some World War II veterans. And I would go to these houses of World War II vets. And when they'd find out you're a veteran, they'd open up and they'd tell you all these stories. But they typically didn't tell everyone because they're just vet to vet. But they, so that was the best part that came out of it, is probably the vet to vet relationship, the instant respect and conversation you get out of that. But I think they come out, they're depressed based on that. A lot of times if they're coming from infantry, they don't necessarily want to be cops, and it's nothing against cops. I'm glad somebody wants to do it, because we definitely need cops. But a lot of these vets don't want to do that, and they don't know what they want to do, and so they're left searching. But now they're older. Now they didn't go to college, and now to go back to college feels in some ways defeating. So I think they're just going through this mental obstacle course of what's going to make me happy at this point. And I think the biggest thing is to decide on a path and stick to it. It's not that insurance is going to make you happy. It's that insurance is the path. And so I'm trying to say, go sell real estate. Sales in general, if you stop, nobody thinks, I want to go from Marine to being some pushy, pot-bellied salesman. That's what they think, because I thought the same thing. And, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can grow a team. You can be proud of the product that you're selling someone. Then you can grow a team that you're proud of what they're doing, for society. You don't have to be the shitty portion of that. It's kind of funny in sales, right? You get, sales is bad. And so you take the bad rap of, what certain people would do. And then, but if you hire a carpenter that screws up your house, you don't say all carpenters are bad. Right. It's just for some reason sales is that way. You just get that. So go out and be in the sales environment, the person that creates a better process, because it's totally doable without being a douchebag.
Yeah. Two more questions before we wrap is I want to ask, what's been the biggest challenge when it comes to hiring Hunter's employees, putting leadership in place? Like, obviously it's one thing to work in the business. It's another thing entirely to work on the business, right? To build the system. So from your perspective, what's been the biggest challenge, or I guess lesson you've learned when it comes to putting the right people in place to build a multi-8-figure company that maybe you didn't expect when you were building it, but now on this side of the fence you kind of see it a lot more clearly?
The number one thing for me has been there are two things. The number one is you have to cast a vision that is bigger than what your people are used to. You have to give them something to buy into so that they'll work towards the idea that I can grow within this organization. You try to build a business, initially it has 2 or 3 employees, and you don't have that vision, and it's just a 9-to-5 job for those people. But if I can cast a vision where they feel like they're part of something, then that's everything to me. Number 2, hire fast, fire faster, promote fastest. And the promote fastest, I think, is the best part of that. When you find somebody that is fully committed, promote them into roles that make sense, right? Not that they shouldn't earn their stripes, but don't take someone who's going to impact your business at a bigger level and keep them in too low of a role too long. But also don't keep people around. And when I say this, it's not because I've done it every time. We have kept people around way too long that we should have let go of, mostly out of fear. Mostly out of fear of what they would say about the business, or fear of what I think they're doing a lot for the business, so I'm afraid to try to replace them, all that kind of stuff. So, but all that advice is out there, and most people say, "Well, I already know that advice," but they're not doing it. So go out and practice. Like, if you already know, it's kind of like saying, I know how to be a bodybuilder and be in shape, but I don't do it.
Don't have to put in the reps.
Most people know how to be in shape. They're just not going and doing it. So there's plenty of people that have listened to enough stuff and researched enough to know how to build a good business, but they're not going to go and put in the hard work, the mundane things. They're not going to, do they're looking at A and Z. They're not focusing on anything.
They're not willing to go through the mud. Yeah. They're willing to go through the hell to get to the heaven. Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense. Now, last question I have for you before we play a quick game, when we wrap up every podcast we play, and that is, when Justin Brock is nothing but dead, gone, and nothing but a pile of dust, what do you hope your legacy and story is all about for others? Big question, I know.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I really want to be somebody in my family that the grandkids and the great-grandkids look at and they're like, that's when it all changed. That's when, and I want to be able to do that without spoiling them and turning them into, the kind of kids you can't be proud of. But I see billionaires that are out there, and I'm not saying I'm going to be a billionaire, but I see these billionaires that have grandchildren that, they're good kids, that are good adults.
That's what I love when I see Trump's kids.
I think I don't know how he's done it.
Yeah. You don't see them with DUIs. You don't see them with any kind of craziness.
You don't see them doing coke in the White House.
Yeah, always respectful of their pops, always respectful with all the hate of the world.
Yeah.
And they stand up, always dressed sharp, always well-spoken, articulate.
I completely agree, man. I see that I know you've interviewed Cardone, so I think you met his kids several years ago when they were younger. Does a great job with his kids. It's... And we get complimented. We had our kids in Italy this summer, and everybody was complimenting us on how good our kids were. And we just, think we love our kids. We think they're doing great, but we're dealing with them all day, every day.
Yes, you see
and so it's cool to see them. And people were telling us, most kids are not like this. But anyway, I think that's a big thing for me is I look at that idea of being, old and sitting in the rocking chair and watching football and actually feeling like you can rest because now your kids and your grandkids are part of something and they appreciate that you helped set that in motion for them. So that's a big thing. And then of course I want my company to stand on its own merit too, where it's operating out there and they're people's kids that work within that company, that their parents were part of that original crew that built it. and then they have pride in that too.
Dude, I love that. It's beautiful. Last question before I wrap up is we always play a game called First Things First. So the way the game works is I'm going to rifle off a quick word or phrase, and then you just tell me the first word or phrase that comes to mind, like a word relation game. Make sense?
Okay.
The only rule is that you can't repeat yourself twice.
Okay.
Got it? All right, number 1, getting married at 19.
Good decision.
Best advice you've ever been given in business.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Worst advice you've ever been given in business.
I was told a lot to not do some stuff that I did anyway, and that was bad advice. So I would say, sit on it and think about it. I don't know what the opposite of details delay is, but people telling you to overthink things is bad.
Yeah. Your first million.
That's a hard thing to quantify, because the value of $1 million was there before, especially in a residual game. But the first time I got to where, I don't know, I'm trying to remember the first time I had $1 million liquid in the checking account. That would have been like the first real, hey, you're that liquid.
Yeah.
It just came from compounding small sales.
Yeah.
But the truth of it is, you get to it, and it immediately became my new default.
Right.
Just can't have lower than $1 million.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And then when I would get close to that, I just start to feel broke again.
Yeah. That's the new zero.
Yeah. And your expenses go up in relation to having that much. And so
I've got to hire leadership and executives. And yeah, exactly. It never ends.
Yeah.
Biggest limiting belief you had to overcome to be where you're at today?
And I know I'm not giving the single word answers, but they say don't meet your heroes.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think it's good to meet people you sort of idolize, because you realize that they don't know that much more than you. Mm-hmm. They might know some things that you don't, and you can learn from them. But the truth is, they're just human beings, and they whether they're afraid or not, they probably are. They just do it anyway. And then you realize, the higher you get and the closer you get to this level and this level and this level, you start to realize that never changes.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, is one of the scariest things in the world is that all the people that are running the entire world right now aren't that much smarter. They might know a few things that we don't, but it's not things we're incapable of understanding. Mm-hmm. It's just experiences we haven't had yet. So it's our unrealized gains is the information we haven't picked up.
That is crazy.
So, but they're no different. They just consistently, pass. And some of them have some good timing as well too.
Yeah, and I think about all the time how people just as imperfect as any of us fly airplanes 600 feet in the air, 30,000 feet in the air, 600 miles an hour. People build huge buildings. People do all this stuff, but at the end of the day, they're just like me and you. They don't know what to eat. They're sore. Their leg hurts.
Yeah.
But
same problems.
Exactly, just compounded in bigger vehicles. Amazing things.
You'll see Trump and Melania, like my wife was talking about how Melania's mad at him and spats his hand in one of the interviews, quit, don't hold my hand. You're they're having arguments just like the lower middle class families are. I mean, it's the same relationships,
Human.
So I think that's the biggest thing to know, and that's the thing to continue to know. That, that's the thing that creates this horizon of how big what's your goal? And if it's just to continue to grow, then there's no limit. You don't have any limit. It's only when you want to stop.
Frugality.
It's been very beneficial to me because I never got myself in a pinch. We've never been, I mean, we've lived paycheck to paycheck, but we've never been massively upside down in debt or, not that we didn't have a little bit, at times. I've taken on some debt. Everyone would say that, but we've never been really, really struggled. The times where I felt pressed, like I had abandoned my frugality, was when I did what other people do normally. I feel my default was so frugal that my aggressiveness on spending, and I say that a lot of people are spend, borrow, and do it, and that's great. But I would tell you can just go out and make money and then use that money. some of the biggest business owners that I know from the ground up, the true ground up guys, there's not that they won't borrow money, but they borrow money to buy income producing businesses that already exist, things like that. There's just obvious wins. When they're able to like grow from the ground up, they're able to create the money that they use to get to the next level versus going out and borrowing. So that's not a don't borrow money. It's just I'm not sure that you have to all the time. There is a process, and that's what we try to teach people. Come in, become an insurance agent, build the money, use the money you created to get to the next level. You know?
Yeah, slow and steady. Best marriage advice.
It's a marriage. Oh, I can't repeat it. I can't repeat it. Let's see. Best marriage advice.
By the way, she's here off camera. So
Best marriage advice. She's always right. No, probably for real is, just certain things are just not worth arguing about, and never like, you're probably going to work it out. So don't say things you can't take back. Things that like haunt you, that that
absolute statements or
things like or digs that, or that, or don't play on their insecurities, because you're never going to get that back. Like you put that out there, so and you're going to work it out. Most 99%, I hope you all do. You work it out, and then all of a sudden you have this forever statement that's there.
Freedom.
Trump 2024. Hey. This will probably come out after the election, so hopefully that ages well. Freedom, money is oxygen in this world, and I hate to come across as the pompous side of money, because I know there's people out there that say all the euphemisms about money, but I've experienced things that I never thought I would experience, like true small points of just like blissful happiness that I couldn't experience without a significant amount of money. And I'm not talking about like evil shit, because a lot of people try to make money evil, like we're at some sort of Hillary Clinton orgy or something. What we're really talking about is just being able to do things without concern that you're over leveraging yourself for your family and the people that you care about is super impactful. And you're able to create processes and businesses with money that help and aid other people, and it's super rewarding to see them win. It's also when you have employees or friends that need something, like $2,000 or $3,000, $4,000 is a huge deal to them, and they're like, I can't afford this car, I can't do this, and you can just give them money. Like, and I'll caution people against doing it too much, but at the same time, it's nice to be able to do it. It's a very gratifying feeling. So I think freedom in this world, the way it is, hate it or love it, money, creates freedom.
Yeah. And the last question I have is for people watching this, men or women around the country, around the world even, who are inspired by this interview and maybe want to get unstuck in their own life, whether they're coming out of service, whether they're a mother, a father, or just trying to figure it out at any age. What advice would you give someone who's listening to this, wants to change their life, but is just maybe looking for that vehicle or trying to find that thing or needs that one voice of reason? What advice would you give to them to kind of take those first early steps to turn their life around, no matter how low they might be right now?
Yeah, it's when people tell you to work in your passion, find passion in helping people with a vertical that pays your bills. I'm not telling, of course I'm an insurance guy, I'm health and Medicare. It's doing really well for my family and so many of my friends. But find something that you can produce, someone you can work with, somebody else's product you can move as a salesperson, somehow that you can create a process that pays you and your bills to an extent that you can be happy, and make that your passion. Quit trying to think like, I have to work at my passion, because sometimes your passion isn't profitable. Not right now. And I'm not saying sometimes it is. There's definitely people out there like Steve Wozniak that built a personal computer and his passion became extremely profitable for a lot of people. But there are other people that their passion is, digging a hole in the ground and filling it up with slime and, doing weird shit, like my daughter. Hopefully she grows out of that before she gets a little older. But it's cute now. But the you know, that's a big thing that's out there. A lot of the you know, I love Gary Vee, but a lot of his stuff is, you know, working, you know, do something you're passionate about, and that's great if you can make money at it. But in the meantime, if you can't, make sure you can take care of yourself. And so think about, you know, what can I do that turns enough of a revenue profit that I can do the things that I want to do and take care of my family in the process.
I love it, Justin. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, brother.
It was a great episode. And where can people find you if they want to follow you, learn more?
JustinBrock.com or, you know, on YouTube, youtube.com/JustinBrock.
Awesome. Justin, thank you so much for hopping on. Guys, make sure to check out all the links in the description down below. As always, live strong, live with passion, go chase those dreams and make them a reality. We'll see you guys on the next episode.